Hello, everybody, and welcome to your live stream here on Friday with the Premier Injuries crew. I might sound a little bit different today because I'm absolutely full to the brim. It's my birthday, and I have been really delving into enjoying myself. I've told Ben what I've eaten. In fact, I'll tell all of you what I've eaten. 20 chicken nuggets so far, 10 chicken selects, large fries. Got a McFlurry here that I'm just finishing. Had some cheesy bites, a burger as well. Just like a light snack, really, before I have a Chinese this evening and then 3 slices of my birthday cake. But yeah, I'm in a great mood because it is my birthday today. How are you doing, Mr. Ben?
First and foremost, obviously I've wished you an off-air happy birthday, but we'll go live and we'll say a happy birthday to you, Matt. And ploughing that much grub down your gullet is very, very impressive. I know you live you're pretty good for 99% of the time. So I think we can forgive you you know, this opportunity for you to ram as many calories down your throat as humanly possible. I'm not really sure how you do it. But yeah, look, good on you. And don't forget, if you need some elastic pants, I've got plenty here that I can send down through the post for you, matey.
Beautiful. I thought you were going to say something like put as much meat in my mouth. Just continuing our...
That's different channel. Different channel.
That's our OnlyFans content, obviously. But yeah, I hope everybody's doing well today. Martin's already said happy birthday, Nugget. I do feel like a nugget at the moment. I'm very, very full. And Diego Martinez Rios says happy birthday, mate. I hope you are doing well too. But there's a lot to chat about today, isn't there, Ben? A huge amount of Premier League stories. We've got to cover Newcastle, Arsenal, Tottenham. There's a lot of things going on at the moment. And if we don't answer your questions today, the best place to go to is the Premier Injuries website. As you can see on screen, there's all the teams up here in alphabetical order. And like as usual, we will be doing it all alphabetical in the live stream. But obviously, we're going to start off with Bournemouth, who play... is it Luton this? No, it's not Luton this week.
Come on,
it's Newcastle. It's Newcastle. And I'm just a little bit distracted by some of these questions here. Martin Keenan says, injury/life expectancy on eating that much McDonald's, please. I guess give an answer to that before we get on to the Bournemouth news.
Yeah, I mean, look, before context for any newbies in the house, this is a working document. We've actually had 18 press conferences today. So the news is coming in thick and fast. We're still doing updates. Hopefully everything will be tweaked and finessed by around maybe 7 o'clock-ish, give or take. But like I say, if there's something specific, by all means, pop in the box, check out the timelines, or keep on revisiting that post or the injury table that will have the latest news. So just to put that out at the top, but we have heard from Areola. That was early on in the day, so this one is locked and loaded for now. A couple of changes we're expecting. Obviously, a hugely disappointing result last week. They have come off the back of 2 performances, but against the champions, that's to be expected when they hit top gear. So 6-1. But unfortunately, the Cherries lost their summer signing, Alex Scott. That's a knee problem. That was a tackle with Rodri. Now, typically that mechanism would suggest we're looking at that MCL, so that inner ligament. Now, they respond really well to conservative treatment, so we don't think surgery is required. Areola said it was a grade 2, so probably in the region of 6 to 8 weeks. With regards to that, Lewis Cook has timed his return from suspension really well. He served a 3-match ban, so bringing him in and a like-for-like swap. And I've done this a couple of times. I have threw in Lewis Sinistera into that Cherries lineup on occasions. He hasn't. I don't think he's actually started a Premier League game since his arrival from Leeds, but he did get a goal from the bench last time out. And I just think now is his opportunity to shine. He is a good player. He has been building fitness, which is why he's been held back a little bit. I feel like now is the right time. And also, I've brought Senesi in for Chris Metten. Had a bit of a nightmare last weekend, but they're the that's a 50-50 coin flip with regards to that. Also, you could maybe bring in Kirkes and put Lloyd Kelly back centrally as another option in there. But we've went with this lineup for now.
There you go. So what are we going to move on to is Arsenal. And there's a lot of interest in this one. Question marks over Saka, question marks over Tomiyasu. What is the latest for the Gunners? And you've got Saka in there, but as you said at the start, it's a working document. Do you think he's going to play this weekend?
Right, yeah, this is the difficult one, and Mikel Arteta is always very coy with his team news, plays his cards very close to his chest. There's a little bit of smoke and mirrors involved, and when he's asked outright for specific updates, he tends to sort of dodge those or gives very vague answers. What he said was there's potentially players returning, and also on the flip side of that, there's one or two who could potentially miss out. With Saka, now it was a strange one because instantly after the game post-match, Seville, he said that Saka had, it was just a knock, it was a kick. And that might be true, but it was a mechanism where he actually rolled his ankle from jumping for the ball, landed awkwardly, and it was that ankle injury that forced him off. Now, as up to yesterday, he hadn't trained, and there was a bit of a session planned for today, so it depends on how he comes through that. But ankles, they respond fairly well. They can be heavily strapped. I just think that Saka is such an important player. I do expect him to be involved. Others in and around that squad, Martin Ødegaard certainly hasn't been ruled out, but we know that he's been managing an ongoing issue and he's missed the last two as well. And again, so like I say, I would think maybe bench at best for him. Eddie Nketiah, that's ankle he missed out at Seville, picked up that knock at St James's Park. Again, nothing too serious, but we're looking at 50-50 call at the minute. I think Trossard just gets the nod. And the other questionable or discussion point would be at that left back spot where Takehimo Tomiyasu was forced off Seville. That was just described as a bit of a discomfort. We know he's had ongoing muscular problems. Zinchenko, like for like replacement, he's absolutely fine. So I don't see Mikel Arteta taking any risks, and that's why we've got Vinny in at left back.
With the Saka situation, I just want to bring it back to that. He's had, I guess, recurring small injuries over the last few weeks. We've got the international break coming up. Do you think that he could be managed conservatively just because the international break is next week, and maybe it gives him a little bit of time and recovery to come back stronger on the other side of the international break?
It's a difficult one. Mikel Arteta and Arsenal will be smarting after the defeat at St James's Park, so they'll want to bounce back. And obviously, Bukayo Saka is pivotal in Arsenal's attack and play. He's been a massive player for the Gunners for the last couple of seasons now, since he broke into that first team, really. And he's one of those players who's fairly robust, tends to be one of those players who plays the highest number of minutes. And yes, I think there's a big difference here. We need to differentiate between picking up knocks and little niggles and ailments, which most players do, and then those sort of true and real injuries that will keep a player out for maybe a significant period. Saka hasn't really got any of those. So for me, like I say, I think Mikel Arteta will want to get back to winning ways. I think Saka will, be keen to be involved in that match. So that's why I haven't played. And let's not worry about England. For now, that's of no concern to Mikel Arteta. Get him through this game. If he's fit for England, then great. If he's not, let's keep him at London Colney, work with the physios and focus on getting him back for game week 13.
Yes, so up next are Aston Villa. What is the latest injury news for the team there?
Yeah, of course, Villa got an excellent win over AZ on Thursday night. So the only fresh injury concern was a slight niggle to Diego Carlos, but in terms of his Premier League, he hasn't really been forcing his way into that starting 11. So with regards to what we expect, not too many changes from Unai Emery. I think they'll go for a record of 13 consecutive wins, home wins at Villa Park, if they can get this one this weekend. So again, like I say, I expect Unai Emery to go strong. There was a slight worry over Matty Cash last weekend, fell up when he hurt his shoulder. He was involved in the squad on Thursday night from the bench. Elsewhere within that team, I've been flip-flopping over the last few weeks between Zaniolo, Nicola Zaniolo, and also Leon Bailey. But Bailey played 90 minutes on Thursday night, so that would indicate that Zaniolo will probably get the nod in the league again.
And, I'm going to ask it because everybody does each week. Moreno, any chance that he's going to push his way into the team?
He's certainly ready. So he's fit, available, and ready to participate. Realistically, do I think he's going to be pushing for a start? Is he going to oust Luca Digne at this point? I don't think so. I think he'd probably benefit from another 2 weeks on the training pitches. This is a lengthy hamstring problem that he was sidelined with that did require surgery. So, there's no need to take too many risks and push him too hard. Maybe some minutes from the bench, integrate him slowly, and protect him, going forward, because we're going to hit a very busy period, over that festive December block.
Yes, and right on cue, as I said, Marius did ask the Alex Moreno question. Brentford are up next. Difficult game against Liverpool, but do they have enough to cause a bit of an upset? Well, is the team news going to be good enough for them to cause an upset, Ben? What is their squad looking like?
Yeah, Mark Flecken was forced off last weekend. That was an impact injury on the thigh. That was a dead leg. Thankfully, he's come through that. He's trained. He's absolutely fine. So we expect him to retain the goalkeeper's jersey. Elsewhere, as we'll see, typically, Brentford going away from home against those big teams, we expect that change to a back five or a 3-5-2 in attack, 5-3-2. We'll have Vitali Janelt on the left-hand side with Aaron Hickey out until the new year. But, and that'll probably be at the expense on the unfortunate Neil Mupai, who is looking sharper, but I can't see him ousting either Jon Wissa or Brian Mbeumo in that Bees attack. The only other potential switch would be Ben Mee coming into the team. He's held in very high regard from Thomas Frank, but Brentford coming off the back of 3 consecutive wins since that loss to Manchester United. So they've won every game in this block of international games. So like I say, I don't expect the Bees boss to make too many changes.
And score predictions for this game, because I don't think it will be as tight as as easy as some people expect. A lot of people are going with Salah as captain. I still think it's a good choice, but looking at it, Liverpool, they have been humbled recently, that they've had a goodish run, but also that draw with Luton showed that there are frailties in the team. Do you think that Brentford could be another team that maybe shows where there's slight issues in the squad?
I think it's a good opportunity for Brentford. They will go there and they won't be too afraid. I think the absence of, and we'll touch upon the Liverpool team news, but Alexi McAllister suspended, Curtis Jones injured, Luis Diaz is probably not at 100% in terms of his fitness, although he has been trained. And of course, we know that his father was released by his captives on last night. So, that's a massive weight from his shoulder. Virgil van Dijk will be coming back from illness that kept him out of that game in Toulouse. The left-back place is up for grabs. We did expect Kostas Tsimikas to come in and deputise for Andy Robertson for the duration of his injury, that shoulder problem. But we did see Joe Gomez thrown in there. So, like I say, this Liverpool team have been in great form, but yeah, I'm with you. I think it'll be a little bit tighter than people think. I can't see the Reds keeping a clean sheet. I'm going to say they'll scrape a 2-1 win.
So there you go. Moving from Brentford on to Brighton, we've already got a few questions. People looking for a dunk update, but just the whole of the team news as well, Ben. What is the latest from the Seagulls?
Yes, unfortunately, a great win in Ajax, probably one of the biggest in the club's history, according to Roberto De Zerbi. But that win was marred slightly by the loss of or another 3 injuries. 3 players added to the Seagulls treatment room. James Milner off early doors. you wouldn't be too bothered about that. In all honesty, there are a lot of like-for-like replacements within that team. Lewis Dunk is the big one. That looked to be an adductor problem. Of course, we have the press conference and the difficulty that you have with the likes of Jurgen Klopp and Moyes and De Zerbi. You're speaking to managers less than 24 hours, after the game's finished. With Moyes, it was less than 12 hours. Players haven't been fully assessed or evaluated. Knocks and niggles can evolve. So you never know quite where you are in terms of those injuries. So what we have to do is try to make those insightful, maybe or educated guesses based on what we see in the mechanisms. And that Lewis Dunk was an adductor problem. So I'd be very, very surprised if he was anywhere near the team on Sunday. But of course, they've got a full day of work on Saturday to go through as well. But as you can see from that starting 11, I don't expect him to recover.
Yes. We've also got another omission that people are a little bit worried about. Adringa, Martin says, where is he? He's my captain. What do you think on that one, Ben?
Yeah, look, I mean, what we've seen from De Zerbi in recent weeks is a lot of changes. And Adinga's been one of the mainstays of that Seagulls attack. And the thinking behind maybe sticking in Buonanetti is just this ever-growing injury list. And De Zerbi's comments with regards to not necessarily this game week, but, talking about the need to rotate his squad, protect those players. And he's one of the ones who's got a fairly high rolling load, which, it's been one of the hardest teams. Brighton have been historically very difficult to predict, and that goes way back to the Graham Potter days. And now we're seeing that because of European football with De Zerbi. So that one is just an inkling. Nothing more, based purely on the fact that, De Zerbi may look to freshen things up. I do believe he played the full 90 in Ajax when I was checking out the team. So Buonetti, he's always seemed to do all right when he comes into that team. So that was the thinking behind that. But like I say, that is just my opinion on that start 11. There's nothing in terms of any indications or hints or suggestion from anybody else.
Now, we will get on to the Sheffield United team news, but Marius has brought up a good point that I think is worth discussing, because obviously Brighton play Sheffield United this weekend. He said he's tempted to play Archer because Brighton have a very leaky defence. You look at their underlying numbers as well as the amount that they've conceded. It's actually quite shocking, isn't it, Ben?
Absolutely, and that's probably been one of the the biggest or the most disappointing things for Brighton this season. Can you attribute that to the number of injuries that they had, particularly in that back line? We've seen Webster, who's been carrying a problem. We've seen issues at right back, certainly issues at left back. Igo Julio coming in, his first time in the Premier League. But also, is it this lack of maybe fluidity, or consistency as well in that start 11, and players maybe taking a little bit of time to gel together as a team, and individual mistakes and errors caused by fatigue through playing these 3 games a week, and that that turnaround between a Thursday night and a Sunday, it's difficult to manage when you're not used to that. So I think there's a lot of factors that influence in that, and certainly if you're gonna maybe pick up on a flaw in that Brighton team as it currently stands, then defensively there needs to be some big improvements, and that's what could cost them this season.
Yeah, looking at it, they had 53 goals conceded last season. They're already on 20 this season. They've kind of gone from mid to upper table in terms of XG conceded, goals conceded last season, to now near bottom of the table this season. And, as good as their play style is, that they can't really keep up and expect a European position to be there for them if they can't stop the goals going in. We shall have a look in a little bit about James Maddison, because we need to get on to Tottenham. But for the meanwhile, we're going to go on to Burnley. What's the latest there, Ben?
Difficult, and I'm presuming we're not going to have much interest in the Clarets lineup. I have through Josh Cullen back into that Clarets midfield. He returns after a 1-match ban. Also, there was a glaring omission from the squad last weekend, and that was El Dakil. No mention from Vincent Kompany, even though he was asked pre-match He had been involved in the 10 previous Premier League games, so you have to assume that it was illness and or injury related. So I threw him back in there. If it wasn't, then maybe Dara O'Shea would get the nod again. But anybody else within that team, I mean, Benson is a potential returner after playing for the under-21s. Michael Obafemi is also building fitness after surgery on his hamstring. And also Ekdal is a player who could return to the matchday squad, but you wouldn't expect him to be pushing for a start just yet after he picked up that injury in the EFL Cup.
I do want to talk about the Lyle Foster situation as well, because obviously his omission from the squad at the moment is due to mental health issues. I think, obviously most of the people that watch our channel, most of the people that engage with FPL are young men. And I think it's very brave of him to kind of talk about his issues. He's talked about how he had depression in the summer, and we hope that he gets through. But I think it's an important talking point to have these discussions as men about mental health issues. So we wish him a speedy recovery. But I think, do you think a silver lining to it is that we can maybe have a little discussion about mental health as a football community? Hopefully he gets the right help and comes back quickly, but not always is that an option for us as young men.
I think you raise a brilliant point there, Jason. I think footballers, particularly footballers maybe in the Premier League, are seen as being the pinnacle of their career. And from the outside looking in, it looks all rosy. They're probably on a very good salary. They're loaded and paraded all over the world. They're superstars. So it would be easy to get carried away and think that all that glitters is gold. But as we've seen, that isn't always the case. And the fact that this has come out and he's getting specialist care and attention to address his mental wealth, his mental health, and his general well-being. I think that's a great cause, and it shows how it can affect you regardless of where you are. So if there's any good to come from this, and like I say, the club have been very open and honest, and Lyle Foster and his family released a joint statement, outlining the situation. If you can raise awareness and if somebody can access that support and somebody feels maybe liberated or confident enough to then open up and speak to somebody, and you never quite know the impact that it could have on somebody. So for that, I think it's fantastic, and of course we wish him all the best and a speedy recovery, and hope to see him back on the Premier League football pitches sooner rather than later.
Yes, and just for people listening, obviously we got the NHS in this country. We also do have a lot of people around the world, so I don't know how to speak about their kind of facilities, but you've got Mind, a great charity over here, who help a lot of people, young and older people as well. So just stay safe, everybody. We're hoping that you are, as we always end each stream, healthy, happy, etc., etc. And so just a little reminder there, just to maybe look after yourselves, but also your friends and your family as well. So let's move it on to Chelsea. And despite winning 4-1 last weekend, it wasn't a very convincing win at all, Ben. Pochettino looked livid on the sidelines with the amount of chances that they wasted against Tottenham. What is the kind of team news effect on this? Are they going to have to switch up players or anything?
In terms of recovery, from a game that went around 22 minutes beyond what you would see typically in a 90-minute game, there's been lots of rests and recovery time, so there's no issues there. And generally, there's been a clean bill of health, no fresh injury concerns. In the build-up to that match, there had been talk about the possibility of Armando Broja returning to the matchday squad. He didn't, but he has been training again, so there's a possibility that he could be involved. But elsewhere within the squad, no issues. Reece James was contacted by Gareth Southgate in England for the upcoming internationals, but he declined the offer, feeling that he wasn't quite at it in terms of his fitness levels following really an injury hampered good few months that extends way beyond pre-season and the summer. But he's looking okay, he's staying fit, he's getting some good minutes under his belt, and Chelsea could be unchanged for this one?
It's going to be a tough one ahead, though, for Chelsea. Obviously, this week they've got Manchester City. Then after the international break, they play your boys, Newcastle, Brighton after that, Manchester United after that. And you'd even throw in Everton as a little bit of a tough side at the moment. They're hard to call which Everton will turn up. How long can they continue, I guess, skating on thin ice here, treading water? Because they spent a lot of money. Pochettino, everybody says he needs time, etc., etc. But the results haven't been fantastic yet. It's not befitting of a team that has spent this much and, with that prestige as well.
I think we have to be careful here that the money outlay doesn't necessarily equal or guarantee any kind of success on the pitch. We need to remember that a lot of those players that come in, need the opportunity to acclimate, and it's all about the here and now, as it always is with supporters, and particularly those players who arrive with big price tags. Mudryk would be one. He's still young, he's still adapting, he's still learning, even away from the pitch, the environment, the diet, the nutrition, everything's new, and so there's going to be a bedding in period, but we've seen in glimpses, and until all of these things are sorted, and this could go 6 and possibly 12 months. I think we've seen that with Christian Pulisic when he first arrived at Chelsea, was relatively poor, and then he had that spell after around about 12 months where he was fantastic. I know he left under a little bit of a dark cloud with a lot of injuries on his belt, but he was world class for a period at Chelsea, and that's what you'll get once these players have settled. And some not to, Mauricio Pochettino will be hoping that, that happens sooner rather than later, but there are no guarantees. We will see which Nicholas Jackson turns up this weekend. Can I just add, he is in my team, so I did get those points for his hat-trick on Monday night, which came as a little bit of a surprise, but I'll take them all those very little small rewards for persisting with him.
Yes, indeed. He's part of the Dinnery elite team that, if you haven't checked out Ben's amazing team, they spell out the letters of his name. Just, with this situation with Reece James at right back, you started him. Do you think he's coming off early, though? He won't see out the 90, will he?
I often get asked questions with regards to, minutes or expected minutes. I think there's so many factors, involved in a decision-making process. If Chelsea were on the receiving end of a little bit of a shellacking, if it was a 3, a 4, a 5-0, does Mauricio Pochettino think, well, I'll take him off. Let's protect him. Let's not take any risks, dust ourselves down. We'll come back next week. Of a similar ilk, and not that I would expect it this weekend, but if Chelsea were 3, 4, or 5-0 up, then it's a similar decision process to be taken. If it's a little bit tighter, if Reece James is having a barnstormer of a game, then and he's feeling good, and there's no signs of fatigue, and he doesn't show any adverse reaction to any of the runs that he's making, and he's playing well, then why not leave him on? That must be a point where he does go out and he plays 90 minutes, and in effect he's got the next fortnight to fully recover from that. So it's not like players are expected, they're not involved in any European football, so they're not, they haven't got the demands of having to turn around every 3 or 4 days. They've got enough recovery time, so really there's not a lot of excuses in terms of those Chelsea players picking up injuries. They should be able to manage their load fairly easily.
So continuing over to Crystal Palace, and this is a really tough game to call this weekend. Versus Everton, they will be at home. Johnston has been in good form keeping clean sheets. The Crystal Palace defence is just, atypical of kind of Roy Hodgson, sturdy at the back, grinding out some good results. But what's the latest with the team news? Because we talked previously about little problems with creativity, but you've got Eze back, and I think that could be a huge boost for the attack of the team, which hasn't been great recently.
Yeah, I've thrown Eze straight back in there at the expense of Will Hughes. I think the temptation will be far too much for Roy Hodgson. I don't think he can resist throwing Eze back in there following a 30-minute cameo down at Turf Moor. The other possible switch would have been for Czech Decore. He had a tight hamstring, but he trained on Friday for the first time since then. So he looks to be okay. So I just see the one change. As a further boost to the Eagles squad and Roy Hodgson, we've also seen Michael Elise back with the first team in normal full training this week. So we expect him to make the matchday squad.
And this could be, a good addition to have Eze back in, but even Decore as well, growing back into the side, he makes and breaks play from his kind of defensive destroyer position. He's fantastic. And Crystal Palace, they're kind of near the bottom of the table for a lot of the XG creativity. They've only had 16 big chances created. Looking ahead, do they kind of need to get these players, Elise as well, back in good form? Because it's kind of mixed ahead. Everton, Luton, Bournemouth, results that you can see them maybe picking up points, but then also West Ham, Liverpool and Man City all in the next 6. What do you think, Ben?
I think Palace are one of those teams, they're never really going to threaten for those European places. I think they're maybe 1 or 2 players away from that. But, similarly, they're not a team that I would expect really to be, at serious risk of being relegated. So they're right around about that sort of maybe 9th to 13th, 9th to 14th in the table. And, I think they're more than capable of grinding out the results against the teams in and around them. And at home on Selhurst Park, and then maybe they can get something against one of their big teams. So I'm never really too worried about Crystal Palace. And like I say, the likes of an Eze returns, and that changes the dynamic of the team a little bit. Yes, you're going to have that little bit of creative edge. You're going to hopefully be able to unlock the opposition defence, but does that leave them a little bit more open to the break? Will Hughes is a grafter in there. He's a ball winner. Yes, he's a little bit tidy, but he isn't an Eze. He isn't Elise. Does that leave Palace a little bit more exposed? So, I think, are Palace better for having Eze in the team? Absolutely. But like I say, where you might see more of an attacking edge at one end, you may see opportunities and the quality of those opportunities also increasing for the opposition.
Good analysis there, Ben. I just jumped on screen, by the way, if people wondering why I jumped, because the big bag, like I had, actually I'll just show everybody, this massive bag from McDonald's fell on me. It fell on my leg as you were talking, and I thought, who the hell is that? I ordered so much, it actually came with 2 bags. So there you go.
I did honestly think that you were having some sort of family get together or soiree. I didn't really expect all of that to be yours, Jason. I doff me cap.
Yes, well, the food there is all for me, but this evening I do have a family get-together for the birthday. We'll be having Chinese, like lemon chicken, sweet and sour chicken, noodles, black bean sauce, beef and black bean sauce, prawn crackers, are they called? I know prawn toast, that's the one.
The sesame toast,
that's it, all for me, obviously, and then people will order other stuff. But yes, there's a little discussion going on in the chat at the moment. We will get onto it. It's all about Spurs versus Wolves, all to do with injuries and what is happening there. But we have to talk about Everton. As always, just to remind people, we go through, because not everybody can watch live, we go through everything alphabetically just so the discussions are kind of ring-fenced about what teams they apply to as well. So we will get to Tottenham, we will get to all that injury news about Maddison and others, and our thoughts and feelings on that game against Wolves as well, because there's a lot to talk about with that. But we are going to stick with Everton at the moment. And yeah, what is the latest for the Toffees in this aforementioned difficult game with Crystal Palace?
Corey struggling with a sickness bug earlier in the week, but he's trained, so absolutely fine. One change potentially from last weekend, which would be I'm bringing Onana back. He was struggling with a tight calf, been playing with that for a couple of games, struggled with the quick turnaround from the EFL Cup last weekend. That opened the door for Idrissa Gueye. I think I'll go back to Onana. And otherwise, it's pretty much as you were, right back slot. Ashley Young gets a nod over Nathan Patterson.
Bringing an Anna back sounds like a Justin Timberlake song, doesn't it? That's a bad joke on my birthday. I'm allowed these. Come on. Mans Anke Anderson. Good evening to you as well. What do you think about benching Saka for Pau Torres? We have covered Saka. We have covered Aston Villa a little bit earlier, so you might want to rewind for that. But Ben is... You're kind of positive that he will play at the weekend, aren't you? Not certain, but positive.
If I was pushed, I would say yes. I would go with yes. I'm not being swayed. Prior to Mikel Arteta's press conference, I was super confident. I'm trying not to be swayed too much by his more tempered comments on Saka.
So Fulham up next. The Cottagers, it's just not working for them this season at the moment. More kind of problems as well with injuries too. What is the latest for them?
A goal scorer in the main. You take Alexander Mitrovic's goals out that team, and it's easy to see why Fulham maybe aren't hitting the dizzy heights as they were at this point last season. And those attacking problems continue in terms of injuries. We see Muniz come in, I think it was his first Premier League start last time out, but unfortunately he went off with a knee injury. Didn't look great at the time. Thankfully, it's not as serious as first thought, so we're probably thinking in the region of 4 to 5 weeks. That opens the doors for maybe either Raul Jimenez or Vinicius. I'm going with Vinicius because, we've talked about this many times before. Raul Jimenez just isn't doing it, and truth be told, he hasn't done it since returning from that horrific injury, that fractured skull that he suffered in the clash with David Luiz. But elsewhere, they're defending all right. They're doing okay. So I'm pretty much leaving Marco Silva's team as it is.
There you go. So moving from Fulham on to Liverpool, and a lot of discussions around them. A lot of discussions around Tsimikas. Will he play? What is your analysis on the situation, Ben?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. Like I say, I think I touched upon it at the top of the show. Joe Gomez coming in at the left. So this is one I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on this and see what we can come up with. So that's really the only position that I see potentially changing in this one. The midfield should more or less pick itself. The only other, you could maybe drop Cody Gakpo in there on the left-hand side of midfield, and that would be at the expense of Harvey Elliott. But I think Endo has to start, and Szoboszlai on the right-hand side as well. We touched McAllister, Curtis Jones, both out. I don't think Luis Diaz is quite ready to start in the Premier League, which is why we went with Jota, Nunez and Salah. Like I say, the Elliott stroke Gakpo one is potential. It's that left-hand side really that I may look to amend or update. Having a little bit of think on that one, I think.
And with Ryan Gravenberch, what is the situation with him? You've not included him in the team. The latest on him was a little kind of, was it a knock on the knee or something like that? Possibility for Brentford. Do you think it's that he won't be risked because the international break is coming up, or do you think he's just not ready yet?
Yeah, it's a one that will go down to the wire. It's going to be a late decision. He hadn't trained up until this point. Of course, they've got Saturday to maybe address that. Klopp. I'm reading between the lines. It really is a 50-50 call for Sunday, but he would be back in game week 13. So it's certainly not anything too severe. For that reason, I just think when you've got options as you do with Elliott and or Cody Gakpo, again, why take the risk when you've got those players who can come in, and seamlessly move into that starting 11.
Luton up next. You know what? I'm going to put this out here. I'm bagging them to maybe cause a little bit of an upset to Manchester United. Maybe not a win, but maybe a draw. I just, the absolute shambles of Manchester United at the moment. Luton, upset Liverpool, a much, much better team. Stranger things have happened, hasn't it, Ben? But is the injury situation going to help them or hinder them?
In terms of the starting 11, it's not really affecting them. I think Woodrow is a player who picked up a calf problem ahead of last weekend, but again, his actual starts in the team and minutes have been minimal. One possibility, you could maybe throw Chong into this starting lineup. Of course, he would be lining up against these former employers, and it was his goal against Liverpool that almost done the unthinkable and helped Luton take 3 points off Liverpool. So there may be a tweak in this lineup as well. Also, we've seen a first start for Andros Townsend last weekend, since joining as a free agent. But generally speaking, that Luton squad, they've picked up a couple of injuries, but I really do like that Rob Edwards. I think he's a good manager, speaks very, very well. And I would like to see, Luton take something from that game. And if they did, could that be the end of Eric Ten Hag's tenure at Old Trafford?
It may well be, and we might be talking not just about players over the international break, but maybe a managerial acquisition as well. But we're going to move on to the blue side of Manchester before we get onto the red side. And what is the latest for the champions?
Generally speaking, pretty healthy. Of course, the citizens lost John Stones to a hamstring problem during the week there. Initially thought like it was quite a severe setback. And we know he spent, I think it was around about 2 months on the sidelines, who hasn't been back in that first team selection for very long. This recurrence or this re-injury typically means that you could be spending, at least that time out again or a little bit more. Pep Guardiola today, and you take what he says with a pinch of salt, but he did seem to suggest that it wasn't as bad as first thought, and maybe a return to the back end of this month or certainly early December for John Stones. Elsewhere, Manuel Akanji was withdrawn from the lineup. I think it was Tuesday evening in the Champions League. Officially, the club announced that it was illness that caused his withdrawal from the squad, but post-match, Pep Guardiola said it was a back problem. He's trained, he is available. So again, as always with this Manchester City team, there are one or two places that are, up for grabs and there's a lot of competition. But certainly, I think one of the ones that I would be wholeheartedly behind and nailed for a start without the Haaland and the Edison would be Doku. Of course, I think he was the youngest player in Premier League history last weekend to provide 4 assists in the game. He was rested midweek with Grealish starting. So, I'd put my mortgage on him starting this weekend.
Oh wow, that is big. That's a biggie in terms of how much you back him. Just in terms of it, you said about Akanji potential back scenario, but also illness. Could you have an illness that gives you back pain?
I mean, if you had a cold and you sneezed, you could put your back out without any, so there's a possibility there that you could,
I was just thinking that, are they linked? So maybe he's got over his illness.
Maybe he sneezed on the bench and put his back out.
Yeah.
Because the confusion arose because Pep actually said that he hurt his back at half time.
Oh.
While he was withdrawn from the warm-up on the club's website. So there you go. And I was thinking, well, has he went off with an illness and then hurt his back? Who knows?
So it's not as daft question as I thought it might be.
Yeah, but like I say, I mean, sometimes what Pep says and the reality of the situation are two completely different things.
It's kind of.
But he's fit and available, Jason. That's all
that's all we're debating really today. Manchester United. What is the scenario with them? Do they have any excuses through injuries, or should they be fielding quite a strong team against Luton?
Well, we do expect Rafael Varane to return to the starting lineup. He seems to have fell out of favour a little bit down the pecking order in recent weeks. I mean, Victor Lindelof is an option as well for Eric Ten Hag, but I think Varane should just get the nod. Of course, that would be at the expense of Johnny Evans. So he's picked up another injury, unfortunately. There may be people questioning the absence of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He returned last weekend to the starting 11 after a spell of around about 6 weeks on the sidelines with a hamstring problem. I just think it's a little bit of a risk starting 3 games in a week following that injury, especially when you've got Reguilon, who can come in on the left, and Diogo Dalot can then switch flanks again and go back on the right. In midfield, we're missing Mason Mount again. You know, he hasn't been pulling up any trees. He has, you know, he's been starting in the 8, the 10, the 6. He's been all over the place. Nothing seems to be working out for him, which I've got Amarat and Ericsson in there with McTominay, who has been playing that little bit higher up as a, you know, maybe the little bit of a surprise. That would force Bruno out to the right. But of course, if Eric Ten Hag wanted to change things, he could recall Anthony, Bruno going centrally with McTominay. Maybe he's dropping a little bit deeper alongside. I would say Ericsson over Amrabat.
We do have a question. Why no Anthony? Is it just purely tactical in your mind?
He's crap. He's absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Would be the top. I fail to see what he actually brings to the team. And I mean, I wouldn't even have Bruno in personally as well, but you can certainly make a case for Bruno. He does contribute in terms of assists and goals, but Anthony,
Nout.
No, mate, no.
Yeah. You did actually have a question on The Athletic about should somebody bring out Haaland and bring in Bruno Fernandes? You gave strong answer there of why would one consider that at all. Very, very odd kind of question to ask, I think. Yeah,
very differential Dinnery move, that would be.
I don't think even you would do that, like bringing in Bruno for Haaland.
No.
But let's get on to your boys. And, you know, I'm not going to lie here. I was really excited to potentially have Wilson as a differential this week. But you've not started him. Tight hamstring. We know his history. Eddie Howe's not going to risk him, is he?
I don't think so. He hadn't trained up until today. He has been out on the training pitches. But again, those can be very deceptive in terms of his full involvement. Only seen part of the session. And of course, you don't know if there's going to be any kind of reaction overnight. Anthony Gordon was rested or started from the bench in Dortmund. I think he's primed, you know, to lead that attack. And if Callum Wilson is fit and available, and of course he would want to be against his former employers, then as we've seen, you know, on many times, I think he's a player who's averaging a Premier League goal every 60 minutes this season. But go back to game week 31 last season, and he had the best goals per minute ratio then as well, way beyond anybody else, including Haaland. So he's a guy that doesn't need many minutes and takes those opportunities. He's clinical. And like I say, I think for that reason, that's why I have Gordon. But there's lots of discussion points around this team. Left back, we've seen, unfortunately, Dan Burn went off against Arsenal with a lower back problem. That's going to keep him out for a couple of months, or certainly the rest of this year. Lewis Hall would have been the player who could, you know, that like-for-like replacement in the absence of Matty Turner. But I'm bringing in Tino Livramento, just given his form. And yes, it's not his natural position, but he was fantastic in that second 45 against Dortmund. And I'm throwing in Hall in midfield with Bruno Guimaraes suspended and pushing Joe Linton just slightly higher up the pitch. Of course, if Wilson was to start, then probably Hall out, Joe Linton back into midfield, and Gordon on the left-hand side.
I mean, because of those worries, I'll probably go for Gordon this week then. I just think it's such a good game against Bournemouth that you don't want to be missing out on that one. I think it is going to be a goal fest. Nottingham Forest up next. Again, interesting game for them. What is the latest with their injury news, though?
Thankfully, it looks as if there's no fresh injury concerns. And indeed, in terms of those players who've been sidelined, everybody was on the training pitches today except Callum Hudson-Odoi. Now, some of those players have been out longer than others, so it doesn't mean that everybody's going to be available, but certainly the news from the Forest treatment room is very encouraging. So we could see a few players back. There will be changes within this team, certainly. I think the goalkeeper's one that I will go out. I'm expecting, Forest to line up very similar to how they did against Villa last time out. And of course, they got 3 points on the board. So, yeah, there will be a couple of tweaks within this lineup.
Oh, and Turner back in the team. What do you think about that, Ben? Is that for certain?
No, I think he's one. I've just heard Steve Cooper was one of the last press conferences of the day. I did leave that. This was, I've heard the press conference, and like I say, in my mind, I think we'll probably line up very similar to last week, given the fact that they won and they've picked up no fresh concerns. So I expect the Greek guy to go in goal. I'm going to Assidious, which is a completely made-up name. I've got no idea if that was it, but it sounds as if it should be close.
Assidious. I don't even know. I don't know which goalkeeper there is for Nottingham Forest.
Assidious.
Sorry, yes, it is Assidious.
Yeah.
Let me just... oh, yeah. It's like Odysseus, isn't it? Or Odysseus. It looks a bit like that.
I tell you what, if I've got that anywhere near, I've absolutely nailed that, by the way. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Anybody in the comments, please say if your mic, if your speakers are working correctly, or if you want to dare to correct Ben. With the Nottingham Forest game, a lot of people are looking at this as almost kind of like a free goal fest for West Ham. A lot of people are going in on Bowen, but I'm still sceptical about the goals from West Ham. Yes, Bowen's doing well himself, but generally the team doesn't score that many. Would you be interested in him, from this game week going onwards? Because West Ham do have a good run of fixtures, but they've not been terribly consistent.
Listen, Jared, Bowen, Ben, Dinnery. Of course, he's me B. So Bowen's been in my team. Fingers crossed, like you say. He does some damage. He grabs a goal. Again, I think this is going to be a tight game. I would not be surprised at a 1-1 draw. West Ham had a great result on Thursday night against Olympiacos, but David Moyes did hint at wholesale changes, but I think there was only 2 outfield players who came in. Changed the goalkeeper with Fabianski, with Paquetá and Alvarez. So, he's either going to go with more or less the same 11, which means that there may be a few fatigued and jaded bodies in that squad, or he's going to change things up, which means it might take a good 20, 25 minutes for those players to settle down and gel together.
Sheffield United up next. What is the latest for the Blades?
There was nothing offered on Hamer. He looked as if he had tweaked his hamstring last weekend, but we'll assume that no news is good news, so we'll keep him in the 11. The one injury that we did know and was confirmed by Paul Heckingbottom was Ryan Brewster. That was an injury to the back of the knee. I've heard a lot of people saying, he's out with a knee injury. I think it's it's the insertion point of his hamstring at that distal end. So that is worrying when you see a tendon problem or certainly injuries in and around that insertion point. It could mean that it's a little bit more time out on from the pitches. Ollie McBurney's recovered from an adductor issue. Now, Paul Heckingbottom said he has trained but wouldn't take any risks. For me, McBurney probably starts alongside Archer. The other one is the Bosnian centre-back.
You're going to take a guess at that one?
Yeah. Ahmed Hozic.
That sounds all right, actually, yeah.
Yeah. So he's also trained as well, but he's been out a little bit longer with a hamstring problem, which is why we're sticking with Trusty in this instance.
God. Good old Ahmed. Trusty is an easy one. Let's hope that
Yeah.
he just keeps his place in
Yes.
the team. Tottenham up next, and my gosh, we got so many questions about them, how they're going to play, how they're going to line up. Yeah, well, where do we start with Tottenham? Because we've got centre-back out, we've got Maddison out, we've got, two kind of sendings off as well. How are they going to adapt to this situation?
Oh, I hold my hands up, Jason. I struggled. It's definitely going to mean a change of formation, in my opinion. The one positive news to come from these last few days is Ben Davies recovered from an ankle problem, so that will help ease issues in that back line. I think we might see a switch to a three, which is what I've went with here with Dyer, Davies and Pedro Porro. There's also concerns around a rolled ankle for Porro, but he's fine. In midfield, I'm bringing Emerson Royale in on that right-hand side, more of a wing back role to work up and down. I think he probably operates better in an offensive role as he does as opposed to offensively. And Pierre-Emile Højbjerg on that left-hand side, maybe he's a little bit unbalanced, but I just don't really see any or many other options, certainly within that team, given the number of injuries and suspensions. Brennan Johnson coming in. We know Richarlison went under the knife this week with Kulusevski and Heung-min Son, the skipper, leading the Tottenham attack.
And just, to analyse the, is it Van de Ven injury and then also the Maddison ones, they both sound like they're going to be long-term, so at least a few months. What kind of analysis can you give on that?
Yeah, so we're looking at early 2024 for both players. There had been some talk and some suggestion that Van de Ven was seen with the squad on the training pitches after that game on Monday night, offering a glimmer of hope for FPL owners and Tottenham supporters that maybe the injury wasn't as bad as first thought, but that was never any chance of being the case, in my opinion. We talk about the mechanism of injury. Now it's the typical non-contact hamstring injury, that sniper, the one when players are running and typically, you see them pull up, they grab. It's that sharp, that pain. As it, that's a good indication that muscle's been overloaded. And we tend to see those maybe quite high up as well, maybe more towards the glute as opposed to being the belly of the muscle. And again, that's a little bit of an indication that we could be looking at slightly longer on the sidelines. That blood supply isn't as good, and therefore it does take that little bit of time to heal. And with hamstring injuries, we're never quite certain with regards to, those return to play timelines because there's such a difficult injury to manage, high re-injury, high recurrence. So I think certainly with him, where maybe he's looking mid to sort of late January. For Maddison, that's worse than first thought. He was included in that England squad, but he was sent for precautionary scans. Unfortunately, they've come back not very favourable. So again, I think we'll be very lucky to see him this year, probably early 2024 or 2024.
With the Maddison situation, he's had injuries in the past that kind of monitoring ones. Is it right that he had plantar fasciitis as well? Maybe I'm getting him mixed up with Chilwell, but he's been managed for quite a while here. Do you think that adds complication to the injury as well? Because we've seen him kind of taken off in previous weeks, almost akin to the kind of Saka situation where he's taken off, there were worries, and then he was fine. Do you think that this has been almost a little bit of a long time coming, and now the team are almost paying the price a little bit, and he will be managed conservatively because of his importance to the team?
I mean, you can pinpoint some injuries going back to pre-World Cup in Qatar. I think he pulled up with a knee injury, taking a corner for Leicester just on that final game might have been game week, maybe game week 15, 16 last time. And so there were concerns about his availability for the World Cup. He was being managed his loan there. And then, you know, he never seems to have been quite 100% fully since then. He's had ongoing hip problems, groin. Look, this will be an opportunity for him to get that rest and recovery. You know, while he's out of action, and hopefully, you know, he's going to come back for that second half of the season, you know, in tip-top shape. And if, you know, James Maddison is firing on all cylinders, then we've seen, you know, what benefit he can be to that Tottenham team. So hopefully, you know, they won't slip down the table too much for their supporters during this interim.
So we move from Spurs on to West Ham. Now, a lot of people were believing that Antonio is going to be dropped. What is your belief on that situation? Do you think that that's the kind of tactical tweak that Moyes is going to do to try and get West Ham playing good football again?
Certainly wouldn't surprise me. Who would come in? I'm just not sure that David Moyes is 100% locked in on Danny Ings. He seems to have been overlooked on many occasions. So I think maybe, you know, because of that, I think that's where we, you know, Mikel Antonio gets that little bit of grace, that little bit of favour in terms of his minutes. I've obviously got Antonio starting in this one, so I don't think there'll be too many changes. But of course, you know, we heard from him less than 12 hours after the game on Thursday night. So, you know, there could be one or two knocks within that Hammers squad that which may impact. Thomas Souček is a player that I've omitted from the team. We have seen that previously with Alvarez being preferred over him alongside Ward-Prowse. But, you know, like I say, there are one or two ways you could go with this. Ben Rama, Fornals, you know, Bourne is a striker in a 4-2-3-1. I'm going with this for now. But like I say, we are reading between the lines and with an element of guesswork because, you know, there is such a long time between, you know, the press conference and the game with such a short turnaround between the last two.
So we move on to Wolves' final team of this game week. I'm well excited because it means that I can shoot off and enjoy my birthday festivities. But I won't rush you, Ben, because obviously everybody needs to get their questions in. But what is the latest from Wolves?
Yeah, not expecting too many changes. Gary O'Neill was a late one, so there could or potentially be some tweaks to this starting lineup. Wolves' uncharacteristic defeat last time out. That was the first win for Sheffield United. Prior to that, you know, they've been putting in some fantastic performances, you know, out against our boys 2-2. That maybe is a little bit unfortunate not to take all 3 points. That's been the story of their season, really. You know, you can go back to that opener, I think it was at Old Trafford, where they should have been awarded a penalty later on. So Gary O'Neill doing a fantastic job. Like I say, there may be one or two tweaks within this lineup, but in terms of availability, it should be pretty much as you were. Pedro Neto is hoping, according to his social media post, to be back, you know, later on this month. Maybe he's a little bit optimistic in my eyes. It did look to be more of a 4 to 6 week injury rather than the few weeks that he has suggested.
Well, there you go indeed. We're going to wish everybody a happy, healthy game week. I'm off to celebrate my birthday, but everybody, I hope you're having a celebration as well. We won't be back next week because obviously it is the International Game Week, but we might put out some content. However,